afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. This session typically is attended by people from the US more than from the UK, but if you're here from the UK, hopefully this is not too onerous a way to end the day. Nice to see so many of you coming in. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Matthew Stibber, and this afternoon I will be looking at what really great thought leadership looks like in 2026, and the kinds of things that we're thinking about at Articulate to try and make that really work. So I'm just going to do a tiny amount of window management. Hopefully you're seeing me, you're seeing my presentation. So without any further ado, let's get started with a very brief introduction for where I'm coming from and who I am, and a little bit of a few parish notices, and then straight to the thought leadership. So I am founder and CEO at Articulate Marketing. We've written over the years, more than 20 years now, at least 2.5 million words by my conservative estimate, probably more like 3.5. I started Articulate because I had been a freelance writer for Wired, Director Magazine, Forbes, people like that. And then I started doing corporate copywriting. So my roots as a marketer are in thought leadership and content. Before that, I ran a computer games company. So I don't know what that is. We, as an agency, and there is me and my lovely colleagues, we do websites, branding, content, and HubSpot, marketing automation and AI. So that's where we're coming from as a business. I don't have live chat in this conversation because I'm coordinating multiple windows and trying to say something interesting, and having people chat at me would be too distracting. But this is live. You can see the dark, cold December evening outside my alleged summer house. I call it alleged because it's a winter house at the moment. Out in the garden here at Duxbridge Manor, Articulate Manor. If you would like to get in touch with me, I would love to hear from you. Feedback, good and bad, requests for next year, webinars, anything. Email me, matthew@articulatemarketing.com. If you want to talk to me, you can book a meeting, articulatemarketing.com/meet, or when you get the PDF of this, just click on that link. I'd love to hear from you. It doesn't have to be a sales conversation, just, happy to help. Okay. There are no webinars in the plan that you can sign up for yet in the new year, but there are in process. We're planning and working out the program. So come to articulatemarketing.com webinars in the new year, or later, even perhaps next week, and there will be a smorgasbord of wonderful and exciting webinars coming up. But okay, that's the advertising, the parish notices. Let's get right to it. When I was preparing this webinar, mostly yesterday, I was interested in when you sort of talk about what's new in 2026 or what's going to be important, you have to think about what is changing and also what is remaining the same. And dates give you that sort of old Ball's almanac sort of reflection moment, don't they? And you get the end of the year, roundup of 2025 and all that stuff. I studied history at university, and my tutor back at Pembroke said to me once, Matthew, do try and put a few dates in your essays. Okay, so 2026, what has changed in 2025? Well, first of all, I want to say that these trends are long-standing. Okay, it's been possible to outsource to very cheap content farms copywriting for a long time. Now you can do it cheaper using AI, cheaper meaning you pay the subscription and the AI does the work. But that's just a continuation and an acceleration of that trend, which is producing increasing volumes of content. Not only that, but a lot of people it's almost de rigueur, it's table stakes now to have a blog. 82% of marketers are actively investing in content marketing. 79% of marketers report running a blog. These are normal things. I remember when I was in 2001, 2002, saying to people like Microsoft and Hewlett Packard, we should do content. We should write stuff. Maybe you should have a blog. And they were like, I mean, it's overstating it, but they would go, oh, a blog, what's that? Tell me more. How does that work? And now everybody's got it. So there's this huge volume of content out there, and you have to try and cut through that noise, and the signal to noise ratio has to be really, really strong now. The consequence of all that content, and indeed the digitization of everyday life, is that there are shrinking attention spans. So you're fighting against people's inattention, and you're fighting against people's ability, and I think this is a skill that we're all acquiring progressively more and more, to filter out stuff that's not really relevant, useful, and interesting. And then Google primarily is sending fewer and fewer clicks to your website to enjoy your content and or filter it out and or pay less attention to it. And social media and indeed Google are trying to make you as marketers pay for that traffic, right? This enshittification of social media and other services means, you kind of got to pay to play unless you have done clever things. So it's and then this whole platform fragmentation, format fragmentation. There are blogs and there are podcasts and there are webinars and there are white papers and there's this and there's that and there's TikTok and blah, 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 blah. Lots and lots and lots of places you can go to get content. And yet 82% of marketers are actively investing in content marketing. So they really want to do this. I want to do it. I'm a content marketer. I want you to do it. Come and hire Articulate to do it. So should we despair? Maybe not. I despair about this. I think this idea that we are less and less willing to trust in experts and people have a vested interest perhaps in the wider political economy in sowing distrust, polluting the well, creating cognitive dissonance. Agitprop and propaganda exist out there, and this is challenging our belief in or confidence in objective truth, and this is a challenging thing, right? But on a more practical basis, we're being encouraged to form our own opinions, and indeed we should investigate and interrogate what we receive. Somebody once said that there are two kinds of people when it comes to loading a dishwasher. There are Scandinavian architects like my wife, and then there are raccoons on crack like me. And in arguing that raccoons on crack loading dishwashers is in fact the right way to do it, I quoted this article in the New York Times to my wife, and she pithily said, well, they don't know shit about loading a dishwasher. So, even an august body like the New York Times is distrusted in this household. So anyway, we'll talk a little bit about building trust and confidence in this webinar. And I think there's a sort of sense in which things that we took for granted and assumed maybe generationally, maybe I'm getting on now in my 50s and I'm looking back and thinking, well, that's how the world works, and younger people maybe aren't like that, and maybe they never were, and maybe that's a constant. This is a fascinating article in The Atlantic, which I just highly recommend, about humans and emotional history. And did people in the past experience emotions the same way we do? Did a carpenter in the 16th century bashing his nail feel the same thing we feel when we bash our nail? Not the physical pain, but the emotionality of it. Did a caveman have the same emotions we did? It's a fascinating idea. And I wonder whether it's changing so fast, or whether there are some immutable things. Emotions, interesting question. As a historian, I'm fascinated by that, and I recommend the article. But on a practical basis, things that we can rely on as marketers, there are some things that have stayed the same. First of all, people read the same. We haven't evolved. We've got 2 eyes, ears, most of us. And so human physiology is the same, and there's quite a lot of good research about how people read and what kinds of things make it easier or harder for them to understand or trust in what you're writing. Human psychology on some fundamental level is the same, and Charlie Munger here, who's Warren Buffett's partner in Berkshire Hathaway, did this video about the psychology of human misjudgment. Fascinating to watch. I think reading Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, also fascinating, and there's a lot of other sort of thought about this. We keep making the same mistakes, so keep having the same thought patterns, same thinking processes, and businesses don't change. they need growth, they need profitability, they need cash, they need to find customers, they need to communicate with their customers, they need to sell. It's well, maybe if you're an AI company, you can spend $1 trillion on data centers without the need to generate a profit. But for the rest of us, so I think we can rely on this. And I think it's very important, therefore, that thought leadership helps people with these sorts of issues, right? It's got to be easy to read. It's got to understand and address human psychology, not in a cynical, manipulative way, but help people think clearly, make good decisions. This is, on some level, this is the job of marketing. It's not to hoodwink people. And it needs to address, in our world, B2B marketing, it needs to address real business problems and propose well-considered solutions. And I think there are some corollaries, consequences of those immutable things. First of all, you have to earn people's trust, right? My editor back when I was writing for Real Business magazine said, you earn trust with the cover of the magazine, with the title of the article, with the stand first, with the opening sentence, the opening paragraph. Each of those things contributes to a reader's trust in you. And I think this is true. This is a model for thinking about thought leadership. You have to be relevant, useful, and interesting, and you have to talk to people about their issues in their language. Yes, from your expertise and knowledge, but if you're talking to them about something they don't care about, and you're talking to them, it starts to look like you're shilling for your own stuff. At this stage, you lose the right to talk about your things in your language later. So you're building this trust bridge with the audience. You need to demonstrate value before commitment, and you need to do what Google calls EEAT, expertise, experience, authority, trust. The content you produce has to sort of match those things. And it's very interesting to read Google's reviewers' guidelines about what EEAT is, because actually they've tried to sort of codify it. So go look that up, Google it. Last point about immutable principles before I share 6 tactics and techniques and things that you should be doing in 2026 is good writing is a skill, not an art. So I get sort of frustrated with people who think that B2B copywriting thought leadership is about fancy words and it's about wordsmithing and it's about sort of polishing. There's a whole set of disciplines in professional writing that are not just fancy. It's not fancification. And 2 decades ago, the Norman Nielsen Group did a research into how people read online and how people perceive information. And fundamentally, if you make your copy more concise, less hyped, more factual, more scannable, and for online reading, you can make it more than twice as memorable, twice as readable, twice as trustworthy and engaging. So, you would want to do those things with thought leadership. And so you don't have to be all big and clever. You just have to take your expertise and write it well. Okay, so let's get into some recommendations for 2026, given that context. First of all, I think human first authenticity will be increasingly important, right? It doesn't mean that I'm an AI Luddite and say you shouldn't use AI to help, editorial assistance and tone of voice feedback and research and. It's very helpful. But authenticity means you didn't rely on AI to do all the work. You brought yourself to do it. You wrote it, you prepared it, you delivered it. And here I am on camera live at 17:15 UK time, delivering this live. I didn't have an AI avatar do it. It might have been kinder on your eyes if I had. Authenticity means I turned up, right? I'm here, I'm present. It means I made an effort. I prepared this. I spent a few hours putting this together and rehearsing it and thinking about it. It means I'm hopefully drawing on genuine experience and expertise. I spent a lot of time in my life in the last 25 years writing thought leadership for my own business and for my clients. Of that 2.5 to 3.5 million, I probably wrote 1 million words. Gosh, that's a lot, isn't it? When I think about it in that way. This human first authenticity is the difference between live theatre and television, right? It's going to be important because there are going to be canyonfuls of AI slop and bullshit out there, and turning up and being authentic and bringing your best yourself to your thought leadership is going to be a differentiator, and it will be increasingly obvious, I think. So there are lots of ways to do this. One is what I'm doing: live webinar, video, live events, filmed events, filming people, but also case studies where you actually talk to people, interview-based writing where you've got quotes and you've done good journalism, right? That doesn't change either. It can be podcasts. I host a couple of podcasts for clients, Black Dot and Clover, and we've helped set up a couple of other ones that clients host. And podcasts are great. You turn up, you talk for a bit with either you talk yourself, you have something you've prepared, or you interview somebody, you have a discussion. Very time efficient, but there is authenticity to it. There's also research and insights. So you're bringing what you know, what you've learned, what you have discovered new. So we do some, and I'll talk about this in a minute, we do work for clients where we're surveying people and we're gathering independent data and we're sharing that, bringing new information to the marketplace of ideas. Second thing that I think is going to be really important and change or become more prominent in the new year, and I've talked about this in a webinar I did about a month ago, widening the mid-funnel. This means that you're going to get less or original organic traffic, even less perhaps. We've seen for ourselves and for all our clients, Google sending less and less and less organic traffic over time, and that trend will continue with zero-click search and AI overviews and things like that. But interestingly, and I say this with some confidence from our own company data, but perhaps this is also true for others, the number of leads and the engagement hasn't changed as much. And I think what that means is that we were getting quite a lot of unhelpful or not terribly relevant visits, and now we're getting more. And I think if that is going to be the case, and if people are clicking through AI overviews and AI search and ChatGPT recommendations and things like that, they're a little bit further down the buyer's journey. They're a little bit better informed about who you are. They've thought more about their problem and they're looking for a solution. This means they're more towards the middle of the funnel than the top of the funnel. And if that's the case, you might have fewer of them, but you need to start doing things like sharing information that you would normally reserve for a conversation in a sales proposal or a sales pitch, helping them understand the ROI, helping them kind of position you in the context of their business more, provide more service data sheets, address objections. It's not quite give them the sales pitch, but give them middle of funnel, early bottom of funnel information and allow them to use that and research themselves before they put their hands up for a sales call. We've been doing this. I'll give you one example. We have a client charter that we share with clients when we start working with them. It sets out our aspirations for what a healthy and successful engagement looks like and how we run project and account management. And it's quite kind of practical. It's quite close to what we do. And we never thought we'd put this on the website. It was for clients. And actually now we've published it. It's live on the website. I think if you go to articulatemarketing.com/client-charter, you can read it. That kind of thing, a little bit, show them a little bit more what the relationship would be like. Okay, third thing in the coming year, you're getting this more middle of funnel, more engaged people visiting, and you want to provide them with a more personalized, more responsive experience that helps them, and here's the critical thing, find the best answer to the question that they have come with, or the best information you've got about the problem that they've got, or the information they're looking for. Help them find the best content for them and help them take the next step. What's the next best thing after that? So blogs and resources hubs that are sorted by date, categorized by format. Maybe they have some sort of legacy SEO nonsense, tag cloud stuff, categorization. That is out of date. It's already out of date. And now I've told you this, and if you go look at Resources Hub and you'll see it, and we're guilty of this. We're changing ours, but we're guilty of this too. It's so sort of mid 2000s. Oh, I'm publishing my blog and I'm giving everything in order. So this example here is a site we built for Causeway.com, who have 300-400 pieces of content and multiple formats. And yeah, you can filter by content types. You can filter down to podcast or something, but that's not the main selection criteria. What we're trying to do is allow people to go, I am in this industry and I'm interested in this theme. Oh, okay, now I can filter on content types. Maybe I want to watch a webinar video. Maybe I want to listen to a podcast, or maybe I want to read. But that's a sort of how do I deliver it? It's still somewhat chronological. I think the next evolution of this is perhaps giving, maybe it's explicit, maybe it's hidden, sorted by popularity, number of views, or maybe it's sorted by kind of what we as the creator think is most important. So this is our best thing, this is our next best thing, this is our next best thing. And those 4 buttons at the top are driven by an integration with HubSpot CRM, so that if we can detect information about you, or we recognize you with a cookie in the CRM, we can change those so that they have shortcuts to show me the best content about this, right? Little buttons. So this is kind of going to be, I think, very important. So website taxonomy and categorization of content, making it really easy to find the best stuff. 4th thing, more than ever before, providing original and unique insights is going to be critical. So, for example, this was published this very week. It's our Black Dot State of OSINT, Open Source Intelligence 2025. To produce that, what we did was we didn't go off to Maury or Gallup and spend a huge amount of money doing a survey. We created an online survey. Interestingly, you completed it and it gave you a sort of personalized sort of benchmark report about your answers. So you said this and everyone else said that. But it also allowed us to aggregate, more than 100 responses to produce this report. And we also wove in sort of podcast interview quotes and insights, and obviously insights from the client. So it's genuinely new, and it came out this week. It's already getting some press attention, and it gives something for people to talk about, gives something to download on the website. Okay. If you're looking for inspiration about the kind of original or unique insights, I love this phrase. Forget the name of the comedian, but years ago I heard this on the television, and she said, your obvious is your talent. The thing that's closest and right in front of your face, that's the thing that you can talk about with confidence and authority and expertise. The other way of getting at this is, what is the most challenging thing that you do as a business? What's the most complicated? It might be R&D, and it might be client management, and it might be the product, it might be something technological. Talk about that. So there are others, and I've done webinars about how to write thought leadership, but I think original insights and personalized insights is going to be really valuable. Even if you don't do big old reports with big old data-driven insights, I have a rule of thumb that I published, almost 20 years ago now, about writing. And if you're not writing from your own experience, the rule of thumb says you should be doing about half an hour of interviewing for every 250 words. Now, maybe that was true for journalism. It might be a bit less true for corporate marketing content. But my old editor at Wired, Laura Moorhead, she said, report it out. If a piece of writing was looking a little bit flaky and a little bit thin, she'd say, report it out, report it out. And what she meant was go talk to people and find something out. So this is another way of offering original and unique insights. Just report it out. Okay, thing number 5, the penultimate thing. I think it is going to be increasingly possible and interesting to personalize the content. An example might be the personalization of a content hub. An example might be a personalized report at the end of a survey. It might be a carefully crafted email. It shouldn't be this misautomation. I'm borrowing Blair Enns' phrase, misautomation, where you've used AI in a very rubbishy way. It's not like it's badly spelled or something, but it's just, I see you're the CEO of Articulate Marketing, and I really admire the way that you've done da 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 da. It's like, yeah, just I know that's written by AI. It's not authentic. It's not human first. It's just synthetic. But there is a growing possibility to integrate with CRMs. There is a growing possibility to use AI to intelligently segment and categorize your contact database. And there is a possibility to use AI increasingly to repurpose and repackage the content you've made in different ways. So that not necessarily nonsense personalized emails, but maybe identifying a paragraph or a section from a piece of content you've done and including that in an email, or including a 1-minute excerpt from a 30-minute webinar about something and just turning that into a piece of social. So there is, both with human and with automation and AI, a way of taking this authentic human-first content, this expertise and this authoritative content, and then repackaging it and redirecting it in interesting ways that are increasingly targeted and personalized. Last week I did a webinar about segmentation and personalization using HubSpot, and if you're interested in my thoughts on that, that's quite a good one to look at. Also, a few weeks ago I did email. Anyway, personalization at scale, going to be, I think, a big thing next year, and applied to thought leadership. And lastly, I think as we are dealing with this sort of rising tide of politically motivated attacks on truthiness and factuality, I think building trust is going to be really, really important. And I think there are some fundamental things that we can learn from good journalism. And I know everybody thinks journalists are up there with politicians and estate agents in the truth. Well, there are some that are absolutely terrible. But there are journalists and journalist organizations that do a really good job of trying to get to truth. As do scientists. The scientific method is another way of getting to truth. Is it perfect? No. Is it better than some of the alternative? Probably. As Carl Sagan said, nature cannot be fooled. So I think some of the things we can learn are clarity about who benefits. Right? Why are you doing this? Well, I'm doing this because at some point I would like people to be aware of Articulate Marketing. Come talk to us about whether we can help. Fine. I think that I hope that's fairly transparent. Second slide in, I told you who I was and where I was coming from. Secondly, bylining, meaning who created it. I think that's important as well. You put your name on something. So people said such and such. No, Matthew said it. I think this is quite important. Sourcing is also a thing that I learned as a journalist of just particularly when I was writing for American magazines like Business 2.0 and Wired. They wanted 2 objective, independent sources for every fact and assertion you made in an article, even in a short article. They didn't want to take your word for it. This article, this screenshot here is from an email that Laura sent me when I wrote an article about, there's no speed limit on German autobahns, which sort of blew Americans' minds because they have this 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. And I went and interviewed an attaché at the German embassy in London, and they rang him up just to say, did you really say this to Matthew? They were checking everything, checking absolutely everything. And she sent, for this little short article, like 200-word article, this was the list of questions she sent to check my sourcing and my facts. Amazing. It's a tough school to write to that standard, and you'd write 200 words and you'd have a page of footnotes like this quote, this stat, this information, here's how you validate it. Now, I don't think you have to do that level of fact checking and sourcing if you are writing about your own products and services or your own expertise, but where you're citing other people, I think you do need to be a little bit mindful and put links and make it available. I think transparent processes also help. I think explaining how you got the data or how you got the report or how it was produced. So we try to do this, certainly for the articulate various flagship reports that we produce. There's a sort of methodology. And correcting mistakes. So if you make a mistake, fix it. And I think perhaps, it's a sign of good journalism and people who care about truth that when they make a mistake, you see this and say, for example, the New York Times, this was corrected, we made this mistake and now it's been changed. The people who are not interested in truth tend not to do that. They tend to just change things. They accuse other people of not caring about the truth, but that's how one of the I think the tells. So as you can detect, I'm a little bit of a cultural pessimist at the moment, but I have confidence in these sorts of techniques, and I have a deep and profound belief and hope that truth will out. And these are some of the ways, some of the things that in my life experience I have detected as ways of proving truth, building trust, building confidence. And if you want to be a thought leader, you kind of want to inspire that. It doesn't mean you want everyone necessarily to agree with you, doesn't necessarily mean you want everyone to accept what you're saying. But I think you have to start from a place of truth. All right, enough philosophy. I'm nearly done. I'm trespassing on your time because I promised half an hour. Okay, so that is my recommendations and thoughts about thought leadership in the coming year. As ever, if you want to get in touch with me, please do. I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on LinkedIn. That's all for today, folks. Thank you very much for joining. Just 2 minutes overrun today, so not too bad for me. Have a wonderful, wonderful holiday and enjoy the rest of your day, your evening. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.